Parents were telling everyone I was too selfish to help family while I was paying their mortgage. But later, I found out they gave my brother $36,000 for his house down payment because he has a family to think about. So I cut them off. My brother bailed, and now karma hit hard. Hey Reddit, I need to get this off my chest because I'm about to lose my goddamn mind. I'm 29 male and just found out that while my parents were going around telling everyone I'm too selfish to help family, I've been secretly paying their mortgage for the past 3 years. Oh, and it gets better. They just gave my golden child brother $36,000 for his house down payment because he has a family to think about. Meanwhile, I'm apparently the selfish asshole. Buckle up because this family betrayal story is going to piss you off as much as it did me. Let me start from the beginning so you understand the full scope of this absolute cluster freak. I'm the oldest of two kids. My brother Greg is 26, married to his high school sweetheart Brittany, and they have two kids, ages 3 and 1. From the outside, they look like the perfect little family. Instagram-worthy photos, matching Christmas pajamas, the whole 9 yards. And I'm the single guy who's married to his work, according to my mother's constant commentary at every family gathering. The favoritism started early. Greg was always the golden child. Charming, athletic, popular. I was the nerdy older brother who preferred books to sports and got bullied for it. When Greg made the varsity basketball team as a freshman, my parents threw him a party. When I got accepted into the state honors program for math and science, I got a "that's nice, honey," while my mom was busy planning Greg's birthday party that was still 3 months away. I worked my ass off through high school and college, got a full academic scholarship, worked part-time throughout college, graduated with honors in computer engineering. Meanwhile, Greg barely graduated high school, went to community college for a semester before dropping out, and bounced between jobs for years. But somehow, he was still the favorite, because he knew what really mattered in life. AKA, he got married young and started popping out grandkids. I landed a really good job right out of college at a tech company. Started at $68,000, which felt like all the money in the world after years of eating ramen and living in a shoebox apartment. I was smart with my money, kept living modestly, paid off my student loans aggressively, started investing. Within 5 years, I'd worked my way up to a senior engineer position, making $140,000. By year 7, I was making $185,000 as a lead engineer. Last year, I got promoted to engineering manager with a salary of $230,000 plus bonuses. I never told my family the specifics of my salary. They knew I did something with computers and made decent money, but that was it. My mom would occasionally make comments about how I could afford to be more generous with family since I was clearly doing well for myself, based on the fact that I owned a car that wasn't falling apart and could afford to take actual vacations. I'd usually just deflect and change the subject. About 3.5 years ago, I was at my parents' house for Sunday dinner. This was back when I still made the effort to show up every week like a good son. My dad looked stressed as hell, and my mom was unusually quiet. After dinner, my dad pulled me aside and told me they were in trouble. He'd been laid off from his job at the manufacturing plant 6 months earlier, and his unemployment had just run out. My mom's part-time job at a retail store barely covered groceries. They were 3 months behind on their mortgage and facing foreclosure. I asked how much they needed. Dad said about $8,000 to get current, but even then, they didn't know how they'd make future payments until he found work. The monthly mortgage payment was $1,850. I did some quick math in my head. I could afford it. It would mean delaying some of my own financial goals, but these were my parents. Of course I'd help. Here's where I freaked up. I offered to cover the back payments and take over the mortgage payments temporarily until Dad found a new job. But I made them promise not to tell anyone, especially not Greg. I didn't want this becoming some big family drama where I was seen as showing off my money or where Greg felt bad. My parents were dealing with enough shame about their financial situation without adding to it. They agreed readily, too readily in hindsight. I paid off the $8,000 in back payments immediately. Then I set up an automatic transfer of $1,850 every month on the first to cover their mortgage. My dad kept me updated on his job search. He was in his early 60s, and finding work wasn't easy. Months turned into a year. I kept paying. He finally found a job, but it paid less than half what he'd made before. They still couldn't afford the mortgage on their own, so I kept paying. This went on for 3 years. 3 freaking years. That's $66,600 I paid on their mortgage, not counting the initial $8,000, nearly $75,000 total. And not once did they acknowledge it beyond the initial thank you. Not once did they express gratitude or update me on any plans to take the payments back over. It just became the new normal, with me silently funding their ability to keep their house while they told everyone it was tight, but they were managing. Meanwhile, during these 3 years, here's what I heard at every family gathering. You know, your brother could really use some help with the kids. Greg and Brittany are struggling with daycare costs. It must be nice to be single with no responsibilities. Some people just don't understand what it means to sacrifice for family. I wish we had more family members who actually pitched in when things get tough. That last one especially killed me. My mom said it at Thanksgiving 2 years ago, while I was actively paying their mortgage. I almost said something then, but bit my tongue. I'd made a commitment to keep this private, and I was going to honor it. But holy shit, it stung. My relationship with Greg had always been complicated. We weren't close, but we weren't enemies either. He lived about 45 minutes away with his family. I'd see him at family gatherings, we'd exchange the usual how's work small talk, and that was about it. He knew I had a good job, but I don't think he truly understood how well I was actually doing. Greg was a manager at a chain retail store making about $45,000 a year. Brittany worked part-time as a receptionist making maybe $25,000. With 2 kids, they were stretched thin. They lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment where the kids shared a room. According to my mother's constant updates that I never asked for, they were trying to save for a house, but it's just so hard with the economy and kids are so expensive. Every time I visited my parents, there'd be some new story about Greg's struggles. The car broke down, and they couldn't afford repairs. One of the kids needed expensive medications. Brittany's student loans were killing them. It was always something. And always, these stories were followed by meaningful looks in my direction, like I was supposed to volunteer to solve these problems. I helped where I felt it was reasonable. I bought both kids Christmas presents every year, nice ones. I'd slip Greg some cash occasionally when something came up, usually $200 to $300 here and there. Once I paid for their car repair when it broke down, which was $1,200. I wasn't heartless, but I also wasn't going to become their personal ATM while simultaneously funding our parents' mortgage without any acknowledgement. The comments from my family got progressively more pointed over the years. At my cousin's wedding 2 years ago, my aunt asked loudly across the table, "When are you going to settle down and have a family? You're not getting any younger." My mom jumped in with, "Oh, he's too focused on his career for that." Some people just have different priorities. The implication was clear. My priorities were wrong. I was selfish for focusing on my career, instead of producing grandchildren. Never mind that I was literally keeping their house from being foreclosed on, while they said this shit. About 6 months ago, things started ramping up. Greg and Brittany apparently started seriously house hunting. They'd found a house they loved, a nice 4-bedroom in a good school district, listed at $320,000. They'd been pre-approved for a mortgage but needed $35,000 for a down payment and closing costs. They had about $8,000 saved. I started hearing about this house constantly. Every phone call with my mom, "Greg found the perfect house, but they're short on the down payment. It's such a shame they might lose this house because of money. This would be so good for the kids to have their own rooms." Some families just don't have anyone who can help them get ahead in life. The guilt tripping was relentless. But here's the thing. I'd already given my parents nearly $75,000 over 3 years. I'd helped Greg multiple times with smaller amounts. I'd contributed to family events, bought gifts, been there when genuinely needed. At some point, I had to draw a line and focus on my own financial goals. I was trying to save for my own house. I wanted to retire early. I had my own life to build. After weeks of this, I finally told my mom directly, "I can't help with Greg's down payment. I have my own financial goals, and I've already helped family quite a bit in other ways." Her response? "That's exactly what I expected. You've always been more concerned with yourself than your family." I almost lost it. Almost told her right then about the mortgage payments. But I held back. I figured once Dad got back on his feet properly, we'd have a conversation about transitioning the mortgage back to them, and maybe then I'd address the favoritism and lack of appreciation. I was trying to be mature about it. Then came the family dinner 3 weeks ago that changed everything. It was supposed to be a celebration dinner for Greg and Brittany. They were closing on their house in a few days. I showed up with a housewarming gift, a nice set of kitchen knives I'd spent $200 on. Everyone was in great spirits, congratulating the happy couple. My dad stood up to make a toast. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Greg and Brittany, we're so proud of you both for achieving this dream. Homeownership is a huge milestone, and we're just thrilled we could help make it happen." I smiled and raised my glass, assuming he meant helping them pack or something. Then he continued, "It wasn't easy, but your mom and I scraped together everything we could to help with the down payment. We gave Greg and Brittany $36,000. It took a lot of sacrifice, but that's what family does for each other. We take care of our own." I literally choked on my drink. $36,000? They gave them $36,000? The same parents who couldn't make their mortgage payment without my help gave away $36,000? I looked at my mom, who was beaming with pride and dabbing at her eyes like this was the most beautiful moment of her life. "Where did you get $36,000? I asked, my voice coming out sharper than I intended. My dad looked uncomfortable for a second. "We'd been saving," he said vaguely. "Making sacrifices. You know, cutting back where we could. Bullshit. Complete and utter bullshit. I was paying their mortgage. They weren't saving anything. They were using my money to cover their living expenses and somehow accumulated $36,000 to give to Greg. My brain was working overtime trying to figure out how this was possible. Must have been a lot of cutting back," I said, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. My mom caught the tone. "Some of us understand that family comes first. Some of us are willing to make real sacrifices for the people we love." The implication that I wasn't willing to sacrifice punched me right in the gut. I'd sacrificed nearly $75,000 over 3 years. I'd delayed buying my own house, investing more aggressively, taking the trips I wanted to take, all while being told I was selfish and didn't understand family values. Greg was oblivious to the tension, too busy accepting congratulations from relatives. Brittany looked uncomfortable, like she sensed something was off, but couldn't figure out what. My uncles were slapping Greg on the back. My aunt was already planning housewarming party details with my mom. I left early, claiming work emergency. No one seemed bothered by my departure. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing. Once I got home, I started doing research. I pulled up my bank records, confirmed every single payment I'd made. $1,850 monthly for 36 months, plus the initial $8,000. Total, $74,600. Then I started digging into public records. Property records, tax information, anything I could find about my parents' financial situation. I found something interesting. 6 months ago, they'd taken out a home equity line of credit for $50,000. My blood ran cold. They'd borrowed against their house, the house I was paying the mortgage on, and used that money to give to Greg. They didn't save anything. They didn't sacrifice anything. They used the equity in their house. Equity that existed partly because I'd kept them from foreclosure and paid their mortgage for 3 years. To borrow money to give to Greg. Then they publicly celebrated their sacrifice while continuing to accept my monthly $1,850 payments without telling me about any of this. I felt physically sick. They'd literally leveraged my financial support to fund Greg's down payment, then acted like they were saints for doing it, all while telling everyone I was too selfish to help family. I sat there at my kitchen table at 2 a.m., staring at these documents, and something inside me just broke. Not broke in a sad way, broke in a "the spell is finally lifted" way. For years, I'd been carrying this guilt. Guilt for not helping more. Guilt for not being the son they wanted. Guilt for prioritizing my career over producing grandchildren. Guilt for every "you're so selfish" comment. Every disappointed look. Every comparison to Greg and his picture-perfect family. But looking at these papers, I realized I'd been carrying guilt that was never mine to carry. I'd paid nearly $75,000 to keep their house from foreclosure, while they borrowed against that same house to give my brother money. Then they had the audacity to lecture me about family values and sacrifice. The next morning, I called my financial advisor, Tom. We'd been working together for 5 years, and he knew my family situation vaguely, mostly that I was helping them out financially. I laid out everything. The 3 years of mortgage payments, the HELOC, the $36,000 gift to Greg, the years of being called selfish. There was a long silence after I finished. Then Tom said, "Holy shit, man. That's financial abuse. You realize that? They emotionally manipulated you into giving them money while actively destroying your reputation." I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but he was right. It was abuse. Financial and emotional abuse wrapped up in a bow of family obligation. "What are my options?" I asked. "Legally? You could sue for the money back. All of it. You have documentation of every payment. The fact that they never signed a loan agreement works against them. Not you. It shows they received gifts they never intended to repay. But that's nuclear, and it'll destroy whatever relationship remains. What if the relationship isn't worth saving?" Another pause. "Then you have every right to pursue it, but maybe give them one chance to make it right first." Set up a meeting, lay out everything, see how they respond. If they double down on the manipulation, then you bring in lawyers. That's when I decided to call the family meeting. But first, I needed more information. I spent the next 2 days doing a deep dive into my parents' finances, everything that was public record at least. I found out some interesting things. My dad's new job actually paid better than I'd thought, about $52,000 a year. Not great, but not terrible. My mom's retail job had become a management position last year at $38,000. Together, they were pulling in $90,000 annually, more than enough to afford their $1,850 mortgage payment. They hadn't needed my help for at least the past year. Maybe longer. They just kept taking it. Because I'd offered. Because it was easy. Because I never asked them to take over the payments again. I just kept automatically transferring money every month like a chump. I also found out they'd taken a vacation to Mexico 8 months ago. Posted all over Facebook about it. Pictures of them at beach resorts, fancy dinners, drinks with umbrellas. Meanwhile, I was still paying their mortgage, assuming they were stretched thin and barely scraping by. The rage I felt was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Not hot, explosive rage, cold, calculated rage. The kind that makes you very, very focused. I called my lawyer friend, Sarah, explained the situation. She agreed to draft the loan agreement and be present at the family meeting if things went south. She also pointed out something important. If they refuse to repay you, and you have to take legal action, the fact that you gave them a chance to make it right first looks really good for you. Judges like it when people try to resolve things outside of court first. Armed with all this information, documentation printed and organized, and a clear head, I made the call to my parents requesting the meeting. My mom's voice on the phone had this nervous edge to it. She knew something was up. I never requested formal family meetings, but she couldn't very well refuse without looking suspicious. I spent the next 3 days doing more research and making some calls. I talked to a lawyer friend about my options. I talked to my financial advisor. I made some decisions about what I needed to do. Then I requested a family meeting for the following Sunday. My mom sounded surprised when I called. A family meeting? Is everything okay? We need to talk about some financial matters, I said. Everyone needs to be there. You, Dad, and Greg. Greg is busy with the new house. He needs to be there. This involves him too. Something in my tone must have convinced her because she agreed. Sunday dinner at their house, everyone would be there. I showed up with a folder full of documents. My parents were in the living room, looking nervous. Greg and Brittany were in the kitchen, Greg helping himself to cookies. Like this was just a normal family gathering. I asked Brittany if she could watch the kids in the other room. This was going to be an adult conversation. Once we were all seated, I opened my folder. I want to talk about finances, I started. Specifically, I want to talk about the $74,600 I've given you over the past 3 years. My mother's face went white. My father suddenly became very interested in his hands. Greg looked confused. What are you talking about? I pulled out the bank statements. 3 years ago, Mom and Dad came to me because they were facing foreclosure. Dad had lost his job. They were 3 months behind on their mortgage. I paid the $8,000 to get them current. Then I started paying their monthly mortgage, $1,850 every single month for the past 36 months. I have documentation of every payment. I spread the statements across the coffee table. Greg picked one up, scanning it with growing shock. You asked me to keep it private, I continued, looking at my parents. You said you didn't want anyone to know about your financial struggles. So I kept quiet. I paid your mortgage every month and never mentioned it. Not even when Mom made comments at every family gathering about how I don't help family. Not even when I was told I was too focused on my career. Not even when I was called selfish for not helping Greg with his down payment. That's not, my mom started. I'm not done. My voice was steel. 3 weeks ago, I learned that you gave Greg $36,000 for his house. You stood up and talked about your sacrifice and how you'd saved this money, but you didn't save anything. You took out a home equity line of credit for $50,000 6 months ago. I pulled out the property records showing the HELOC. My dad's face confirmed everything. You borrowed against the house I've been paying for. You used that borrowed money to give Greg a down payment. Then you celebrated yourselves for being such generous, self-sacrificing parents, while I, the guy who literally kept your house from being foreclosed on, was painted as the selfish one who doesn't help family. The room was dead silent. Greg looked like he'd been slapped. I didn't know, he said quietly. They never told me you were helping them. Of course you didn't know. They made sure no one knew. That way, they could take credit for being amazing parents while taking my money every month. I turned back to my parents. Here's what's going to happen. Effective immediately, I'm done paying your mortgage. That's your responsibility now. You've got the HELOC money. Figure it out. We used most of that for Greg, my dad started. Not my problem. You made your choice. You chose to borrow against the house to give Greg money instead of, I don't know, maybe taking over your own mortgage payments? That was your decision. Now deal with the consequences. My mom found her voice. After everything we've done for you, everything you've done for me, I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. You mean raising me? That's called being a parent. That's the minimum requirement. I don't owe you endless financial support because you managed to keep me alive to adulthood. We gave you a good life, and I've given you nearly $75,000 over 3 years while you told everyone I was selfish, while you took credit for sacrificing for Greg. Do you have any idea how that feels? Do you care? Silence. My mother looked away. My father just sat there. Greg was staring at the bank statements like they might spontaneously combust. I'm also going to need you to start paying me back, I continued. I don't expect the full amount immediately, but we're drawing up a formal loan agreement. You have 1 week to agree to repayment terms with my lawyer, or I'll pursue other legal options. You'd sue your own parents? My mom's voice was shrill. You took $75,000 from me under false pretenses while publicly humiliating me for not being generous enough. What did you think would happen? Greg finally spoke up. Listen, man, I really didn't know about any of this. If I'd known they were struggling that badly, I wouldn't have accepted. Don't. I cut him off. This isn't about you. This is about them. You didn't know. And I believe you. But they knew. They knew exactly what they were doing. I stood up, gathering my documents. I'm done being the family ATM. I'm done being disrespected while I subsidize your lives. You want to know what's really selfish? Taking someone's money for years while telling everyone they don't contribute. That's selfish. My mother started crying. The manipulative kind of crying meant to make me feel guilty. It didn't work. We're your parents. We raised you, and I paid you back with $75,000 plus years of being told I was a disappointment for not having kids and focusing on my career instead. I'd say we're even. I walked toward the door. Greg followed me out. Hey, wait! I really didn't know. Is there anything I can do? I looked at my younger brother. He looked genuinely distressed. Did you know they were telling people I was selfish? He hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, Mom said it a lot. She'd complain that you never offered to help us with the kids or money stuff. I figured you were just doing your own thing and didn't want to get involved. I helped you multiple times. Paid for your car repair, gave you cash when you needed it, always bought nice gifts for the kids. I just wasn't willing to fund a house down payment on top of secretly paying Mom and Dad's mortgage. He winced. Jesus. I'm sorry, man. I had no idea. It's not your fault. But I need you to understand, I'm done with them. If you want to maintain a relationship with me separate from them, I'm open to that. But I'm never going back to being treated like that. Greg nodded slowly. I get it. For what it's worth, the stuff Mom said about you, I should have defended you more. I just got used to how she talked about everyone. We stood there awkwardly for a moment. Then I got in my car and drove home. My phone started blowing up within an hour. My mom, my dad, my aunts, who they'd clearly called to complain to, even some cousins, all telling me I was making a mistake, that family is forever, that parents deserve respect, that I was being cruel and vindictive. I blocked most of them. The few I didn't block got a simple message. I paid their mortgage for 3 years while they told everyone I was selfish. They used my financial support to borrow money to give to Greg, then celebrated themselves for it. If you think I'm the bad guy here, we have nothing more to discuss. My lawyer friend drew up a formal loan agreement. My parents had 7 days to sign it, agreeing to repay $74,600 at $500 per month, interest-free, over the next 12.5 years. The alternative was I'd pursue legal action for the full amount immediately. They didn't sign. My mother called instead, crying, saying I was trying to ruin them, that they'd lose the house, that how could I do this to them? You'll lose the house because you can't afford the mortgage without my help, I said calmly. That was always the reality. You just got comfortable living beyond your means on my dime. We're your parents. And I'm the son you publicly called selfish while I paid your bills. Sign the agreement or talk to my lawyer. They signed it on day 6. Barely made their first payment, but they made it. I suspect they're going to try to default or make this as difficult as possible, but I've got everything documented. Every payment I made, the HELOC records, witnesses to their comments about me. If they want to fight this, I'll win. Greg called me a week after the big confrontation. Mom and Dad are freaking out about the mortgage payments. They're asking me to help them. Are you going to? I didn't care either way, but I was curious. No, Brittany and I talked about it. We've got our own mortgage now, and we didn't know any of this was happening. They made their choices. Plus, Brittany pointed out that you'd been helping them for years, and they just kept taking. That's not right. I felt some of the tension in my chest ease. At least my brother got it. Thanks for telling me. Yeah. Also, Mom's been calling everyone in the family to paint you as the villain. Just so you know. Aunt Linda's on her side. Uncle Tom told her she was full of shit. I laughed despite myself. Uncle Tom never liked my mom. Good to know. Listen, Greg said. I know we were never super close, but I want to change that. Brittany and I were talking, and we want you to know you're welcome at our place anytime. No strings attached. Just, if you want a relationship with your brother and his family that's separate from mom and dad, we're here. That actually choked me up a little. I'd like that. Cool. Also, just between us, the $36,000 they gave us? We're setting aside $500 a month to pay you back. I know you didn't ask for it, but it feels like the right thing to do. They used your money indirectly to help us. That's not okay. Greg, you don't have to. We want to. It'll take a while, but we'll get there. Family should mean something good, not just obligation and guilt. We've had dinner at Greg's house twice since then. It's weird, but good. His kids call me uncle, which is strange because I've barely been in their lives before. But they're cute kids, and Brittany is actually really cool when my parents aren't around poisoning the well. As for my parents, they made 2 mortgage payments, then called me crying that they couldn't afford it. They'd have to sell the house. I told them that was their choice to make. They could sell, downsize to something affordable, and figure out their finances like adults. They acted like I'd suggested they live in a cardboard box. After everything we did for you, my mom sobbed. We raised you. We loved you. You used me, I corrected. You took $75,000 from me while telling everyone I was selfish. You borrowed against your house to give Greg money, then acted like martyrs. And even now, you're not apologizing. You're not taking responsibility. You're just upset that your ATM turned off. She hung up on me. 2 days later, I got an email from my father. It was long, rambling, full of justifications about how hard things had been for them, how much stress they were under, how Greg needed help more than I did because he had kids, how I didn't understand the pressure of being a parent and provider. Not once did he apologize. Not once did he acknowledge that what they'd done was wrong. It was all explanations for why they'd had to do what they did, why it was actually reasonable, why I was being unreasonable for being upset. I didn't respond. My mom has started telling people I abandoned them in their time of need, that I'm refusing to help my poor elderly parents keep their home. She's painting herself as the victim of an ungrateful son. Some relatives have reached out with concerns. I've sent them the documentation, the bank statements, the loan agreement, the HELOC records. Most of them shut up after that. A few still think I should be the bigger person and let it go, because they're your parents. To those people, I say, being someone's parent doesn't give you unlimited permission to exploit them. It doesn't mean you can take their money while calling them selfish. It doesn't mean you get to avoid consequences for your choices. 3 months have passed. My parents are selling their house. They're moving into a smaller rental they can actually afford. My dad's working full-time, and my mom got a better-paying job. They're learning to live within their means, probably for the first time in years. They've made 3 payments on the loan agreement, $500 a month. They haven't missed one yet, though my mom makes sure I know how much of a sacrifice it is. The irony of her using that word isn't lost on me. Greg and I have dinner every few weeks. His kids are growing on me. Brittany makes me laugh. It's nice having family that doesn't make me feel like a wallet with legs. They're still paying me back $500 a month too, even though I've told them multiple times they don't have to. Greg insists. He said he wants his kids to grow up understanding that taking responsibility matters, even when it's hard. As for me, I bought myself a condo. Nice place, 2 bedrooms, great view. I can actually afford it comfortably because I'm not paying someone else's mortgage anymore. I'm back on track with my retirement goals. I've been on 3 vacations in the past 2 months just because I can. But the biggest change? I'm not angry anymore. I was furious for weeks after the confrontation. Hurt, betrayed, bitter. But it's faded. What I feel now is relief. Relief that I'm not trapped in that toxic dynamic anymore. Relief that I don't have to smile through another family dinner while being told I'm selfish. Relief that my hard-earned money is actually going toward building my life instead of subsidizing people who didn't appreciate it. My mom called last week, first time in a month. She asked if we could put this all behind us and move forward as a family. I asked if she was ready to apologize for taking my money, while publicly calling me selfish. She said I was holding on to grudges and needed to learn to forgive. I told her forgiveness requires accountability, and she still hadn't acknowledged what she'd done wrong. She hung up on me again. Maybe someday we'll have a real relationship again. Maybe they'll eventually actually apologize and take responsibility for their choices. Maybe they'll realize that respect is a two-way street, even between parents and children. Update. Some of you asked what happened with my parents' house. They sold it last month. Made a decent profit despite the HELOC. The market in their area has been good. After paying off the mortgage and the line of credit, they walked away with about $80,000. They bought a small two-bedroom house in a less expensive area for cash. No more mortgage payments to worry about. They're actually in a better financial position than they've been in years. My mom sent me a text. We're settled in the new house. It's small, but it's ours. I guess you were right that we needed to downsize. Not an apology. Not acknowledgement of what they did. Just that single grudging admission that I was right about one thing. I didn't respond. Greg told me later that my mom had complained to him about the text. I practically apologized and he couldn't even respond. I'm still getting my $500 monthly payments from both them and Greg. Neither has missed a payment. At this rate, my parents will have paid me back in full by the time I'm 42. Greg will have his portion paid back even sooner since it's a smaller amount. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.